Okay, so we're at the election of 1932. Hoover had run for re-election, but after the Bonus Army incident and other issues with his presidency, he did not win. Franklin Delano Roosevelt wins and becomes President of the United States. He serves from 1933 until 1945. So if you do the math, that is 3 full four-year terms. And he was actually elected to a 4th term, but he died about a month or so into that 4th term. So he has served as president longer than any other president, and any other president ever will, because after he was president, we added to the Constitution an amendment that states that a president can only serve 2 terms. So after that, no one else was able to do that, but he did. He was elected to 4 terms. He was a Democrat. He had very different ideas on how to end depression, much different than Herbert Hoover, and the American people at this point were desperate for anything different from what Herbert Hoover provided. So many people were very fond of FDR. I mean, obviously, he was elected to 4 terms. All right, after the election of 1932, the 20th Amendment was added to the Constitution. The 20th Amendment reduced the time between the election of the national official and their assumption of office. So basically what that means is before the 20th Amendment, you were elected in November, the president was, and they didn't actually take office until like March, and that's a long time between, and so we reduced that, and so now we know, especially this year, that the election is still in November, but now the president takes office in January. So January 20th will be Inauguration Day, and that's when we will have a new president. Also, part of the 20th Amendment states, it kind of makes sure that gives instructions on what would happen or what would take place if the president-elect dies before officially taking office as president, and that states that the vice president-elect would become president of the United States. So using our current situation as an example, Joe Biden has now officially won the presidency, and so if something were to happen to Joe Biden between now and January 20th, then his vice president, Kamala Harris, would then become president of the United States. And that is in the 20th Amendment. The Forgotten Man, this is what FDR used as his campaign for this election of 1932. He promised to help the average people, the common man, the middle class, working class people, and he referred to them as the Forgotten Man, them being probably the most, the people that were harmed the most during the Great Depression, the working class. FDR believed in direct relief. And so that means instead of like just kind of providing a few jobs here and there, he believed in actually putting money in the hands of the people in need. An example would be welfare. Welfare started during this time, giving people money. He also did believe in giving people jobs and different things to help them, but direct relief meaning they're actually going to just give the people money to try to provide relief to help them during the Depression. The Public Works Program, FDR also supported the idea of public works. So these are going to be building projects just like the one we talked about a while ago with the Boulder Dam, the Hoover Dam. These are going to be different building projects paid for by the government. The project employed people to build whatever it was, but something for public use. So highways, libraries, schools, dams, things like that. That's part of the Public Works Program. Keynesian economics. This is something else that FDR supported. And Keynesian economics is an economic theory that states the government needed to spend money to create jobs and get the United States out of the Great Depression. Basically, we have to spend money to get out of the Depression. This policy was named after John Maynard Keynes. He was an English economist, and he's the one that created the idea of Keynesian economics. Also, kind of going along with Keynesian economics and something else that FDR supported would be deficit spending. So FDR supported the idea of deficit spending. This meant that we would follow the Keynesian economic theory to fix the Great Depression, which is also going to cost lots of money because we're providing all of these jobs for spending money. Because we have a public works program, we're providing jobs, spending money through Keynesian economics in order to pay people to get to work, but who's going to, where is this money going to come from? So these are public jobs, meaning the government will pay for it. When before, obviously we know now that tax money goes to pay for a lot of the stuff during the Great Depression. They can't raise taxes because people can't afford anything at this point, and so they, instead of worrying about how to pay for it, they just borrow it. They borrow the money. This created a huge budget deficit. Definitely has put the country more into debt. The Black Cabinet These were influential black leaders in America, and FDR hired them to advise him on policies that would improve the lives of African Americans. This was kind of a modern way of thinking for a president. Most presidents before him had not thought as much about the African American community, and he did so much so that he hired people to advise him on how he could help the African American community. The 21st Amendment. We've already learned about the 21st Amendment, so you should already know the 24th Amendment, it was supported and passed by FDR, is the one that repealed the 18th Amendment. Remember, the 18th Amendment is prohibition, it's the one that made alcohol illegal, and so now alcohol is legal again. The main reason for the repeal of this amendment, the 18th, was because the huge increase of organized crime that we already learned about, and also by making alcohol legal again, the government could now tax it, and they could make some money off of alcohol. Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt was FDR's wife. She was the first lady. She also served as a very close advisor to her husband, to FDR. He called her his eyes and ears. He called her this because she would go out, meet, and speak with the public. We know that FDR was in a wheelchair, as you saw in one of the pictures earlier, and he could not go out as much because he was handicapped. He had contracted polio in his 30s, and after that, he was handicapped. He was crippled from the waist down. He could not walk or have use of his legs. So he also didn't like being in a wheelchair. He felt like the wheelchair made him look weak. That's what he thought. And so he didn't like to go out in public so much in a wheelchair. And so Eleanor, his wife, the first lady, she did a lot of that for him. And she did a lot of speaking, and she did a really good job as first lady. She also helped him with the Black Cabinet and different things. The New Deal, this is a really important topic that you need to pay attention to. It will be on the LEAP test. It's always on there and on your test. So the New Deal is the name that is given to the policies that FDR proposed and pushed through Congress to end the Great Depression. Just like Teddy Roosevelt had the Square Deal, Woodrow Wilson had New Freedom. Remember, they all had different names to their policies and procedures. Well, this was the name of FDR's policy procedures. It was known as the New Deal. So they called it the New Deal, and there's a lot of information that goes underneath the New Deal. We're just going to briefly cover it to give you an idea. So there were three main goals with the New Deal. We call them 3 R's. You can see them there on the screen. Relief would be the first one, and this just meant that FDR sought to provide relief to the people in need in the country. So providing relief, we talked about how we wanted to do direct relief with welfare and money and jobs and things like that. That would fall under relief. Recovery. This meant that FDR wanted to bring the United States out of the Great Depression. We needed to get out of it. We, couldn't stay stuck in this situation. And so these are going to be policies that fall under that goal, which is to try to get the United States out of the Great Depression. And then we have reform, and this meant that FDR wanted to ensure the United States would never suffer another Great Depression again. And so he wanted to put some policies in place that would keep that from ever happening. The last thing you see on the screen is the Brain Trust. And so, because the New Deal was so, elaborate in its plan, and if you look at this political cartoon there to the right of the screen, you'll see, and I'll tell you about it in just a second, but if you look on the table, all those little bottles on the table, it's supposed to be medicine, and each one of those represents a New Deal policy, and that's just some of them. There's way more than that, but you get the idea. While FDR was a very smart man and very dedicated to being president, he could not possibly do a good job on every single one of those on his own. So he hired some very, very smart people, some intellectuals in government, and he hired them and put them in charge of different parts of the New Deal. They gave this group of intellectuals, these academic advisors, a nickname, and they nicknamed them the Brain Trust because they were so well educated and smart in whatever their topic was. We already talked about FDR's first 100 days in office. We did that before the break, so go back and watch that video if you need to. We also already talked about the banking holiday, so let's move down to fireside chats. These were radio speeches. Remember back then, during this time period, most all families had radios in their homes, and so these were radio speeches that FDR would make to the American people. In these speeches, he would explain his plans and goals in a very typical, in a way that typical Americans could understand. So very simply, just like an easy way to talk to people and just carry on conversations with them. And the U.S. public felt a personal connection with FDR because of these speeches. They felt like he was sitting right there in their living room with him, and they felt like that he really knew them and understood them, and they formed a really personal connection with FDR because of these speeches. And they called these speeches fireside chats. People would just sit around a fire, families would gather around a fire on the radio and listen to FDR. We've already talked about FDIC, and we've already talked about CCC, so go down to letter E, and that is the AAA. This is a New Deal program. All these letters are New Deal programs. This one stands for Agricultural Adjustment Administration, and this focused on helping farmers in America. It attempted to lower the number of crops farmers were growing and supplying, which in turn would cause the price of these crops to rise. The government would pay farmers to limit their crop yield. So they're basically paying them to not produce much, which sounds crazy, but if you think about it, we already talked about one of the long-term causes for the Great Depression was overproduction of goods in the 1920s. And so remember, the farmers had produced too much, which makes the price drop. And so the idea here is they would produce much less, which would raise the prices, and raising the prices would in turn help the farmers. So the AAA was in charge of that. TVA stands for Tennessee Valley Authority. This is another New Deal program. The program built dams and controlled the waterways throughout the Tennessee Valley area, and this in turn led to cheap, affordable power throughout the Tennessee Valley area. There were more policies added to the New Deal later. Some people even called it the second New Deal. But these are some of those policies. We have talked about all of these except for letter B. So let's look at letter B, the NLRA. NLRA, also known as the Wagner Act. This was a New Deal program. It stands for the National Labor Relations Administration. It is also known as the Wagner Act, as I said. This focused on making sure workers and labor unions were protected and not being exploited by their employers. So this is going to protect labor unions, and it's going to protect workers throughout the Great Depression. We also have already talked a lot about FDR's critics. We already learned about Father Charles Coughlin, Dr. Townsend. We learned about Huey Long and the Show the Wealth program. We also learned about the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court and the court packing plan. So the last thing on here we need to talk about would be conservatives. Some conservatives, many of them actually disapproved of FDR and his New Deal program, and these are some of the reasons why. So one main reason that conservatives did not really agree with the New Deal and FDR is they felt like that FDR was creating what was known as a welfare state. This meant that they felt too many people were now too reliant on the government to survive. And I'll just let you think about whether or not you agree with that or not. If we now have a welfare state where too many people are reliant on the government to survive, many conservatives back then felt like that was definitely something that was being created through this whole situation with the New Deal. Another criticism of the conservatives towards FDR would be they felt like the size of the federal government had gotten way too big under FDR. So we know the more the federal government is involved with our everyday life, the bigger the federal government gets, and the New Deal definitely had the federal government involved in interfering in people's lives. Not always a bad thing, but that's just the case. And so this meant the government was going to grow. It grew under FDR, and it also felt, many conservatives also felt like this was going to cost America too much money, leading us to higher deficits and higher debts. All right, and the last one, we're done. The end of the Depression. So, how did the Depression end and when? Let's do when first. The Depression ended 1938 into 1939. So, towards the end of 1938, it's getting better. Into 1939, much better. So, how did it end? Let's talk about that. Let's first talk about the results of the New Deal. The New Deal did not end the Great Depression, so make sure you understand that first. What did happen under the New Deal was the size and cost of the federal government grew. People did, however, though, feel better emotionally because of the New Deal programs. More people did have jobs, but the unemployment rate was still high. So basically, the New Deal made people feel better. It made them feel like somebody was helping them and somebody cared about them, the president was working for them. Other than that, it really did not do a whole lot, other than really make people feel better and give a few more people jobs. Let's talk about the results of World War II. So World War II is our next unit, and this is just a little brief introduction to that, which also ends our unit on the Great Depression. So in 1939, World War II breaks out in Europe. At that point, America then becomes the supplier of many of the products and goods some of the nations in the war needed to survive. That demand for these supplies from the U.S. caused factories to reopen. It caused it led to a dramatic drop in the unemployment rate, and now we are all working again. People go back to work. We're now the suppliers of all of this weapons and ammunition and all the different things that you need for war. And so this is what actually caused the Great Depression to end. World War II is what ended the Great Depression. I'm going to stop there. Test will be Monday. Or Tuesday, depending on if you're odd or even day.